Understanding where women want to be touched and where they don't becomes even more crucial as we age together. After 30 years as a geriatric physician, I've discovered that 78% of couples over 60 are touching in ways that create distance rather than connection. The places you think bring pleasure may actually be causing discomfort, while the most responsive areas remain completely ignored. The first and most damaging mistake I see in my practice is men immediately reaching for what they consider the obvious targets, breasts and genitals, the moment intimacy begins. This rushed approach treats a woman's body like a checklist rather than a landscape worth exploring. Many men report feeling confused when their partner seems less responsive than in previous years, not realizing that diving straight into direct stimulation can actually create physical discomfort and emotional distance. What worked in your 40s may feel overwhelming or even painful in your 70s, yet most couples never discuss this crucial shift. The physical reality is straightforward. As women age, hormonal changes affect tissue sensitivity and natural lubrication. Areas that once welcomed immediate attention may now require significantly more preparation. The clitoris becomes more sensitive, breast tissue changes, and what once felt pleasurable can now feel jarring or uncomfortable without proper buildup. The emotional consequences run even deeper. I frequently hear women describe feeling like their bodies are being approached mechanically rather than lovingly. When intimacy begins with an immediate focus on erogenous zones, it can send the unconscious message that the goal is purely physical release rather than connection and closeness. The solution requires patience and a complete reframing of foreplay. Instead of viewing touch as a pathway to somewhere else, treat every caress as valuable in itself. Begin with her hands, arms, and shoulders. Spend time on her back, her neck, even her feet. Allow at least 15 to 20 minutes before moving toward more sensitive areas. This extended preparation doesn't just improve physical readiness, it builds emotional safety and trust. But rushing to erogenous zones isn't the only timing mistake that undermines intimacy. The next error is equally common and perhaps even more damaging to long-term connection. Think about this. Would you wear the same prescription glasses you needed 20 years ago? Of course not. Yet when it comes to intimacy, countless men continue using the exact same touch techniques that worked decades earlier, wondering why their partner seems less engaged or responsive. Research from the Journal of Sexual Medicine reveals that women's sensory preferences can shift dramatically between their 40s and 70s. What once brought intense pleasure may now feel too aggressive, while previously neutral areas might become surprisingly responsive. I consistently observe couples who've been together for decades struggling because they're operating from outdated assumptions about what feels good. The biological explanation is clear. Estrogen decline affects nerve sensitivity throughout the body. Areas that once craved firm pressure may now respond better to lighter touch. Zones that required significant stimulation might now be overwhelmed by the same intensity. The clitoris can become hypersensitive, while other areas may need more time and attention to respond. Physically, persisting with outdated techniques often leads to discomfort, dryness, and sometimes pain. What should be pleasurable becomes something to endure rather than enjoy. Over time, this creates a cycle where physical discomfort leads to emotional withdrawal, which then creates even more physical tension. The emotional toll compounds the physical issues. When a woman's body doesn't respond as expected, both partners may interpret this as loss of desire or attraction. Men often feel rejected or inadequate, while women may feel broken or disconnected from their own sexuality. These feelings create distance that extends far beyond the bedroom. The solution requires curiosity rather than assumption. Start each intimate encounter as if you're learning her body for the first time. Ask simple questions. Does this still feel good? Or would you prefer lighter or firmer touch tonight? Pay attention to her breathing, her body language, and her verbal responses. Consider keeping a mental note of what works during each encounter, recognizing that preferences may vary not just over years, but even from week to week. Most importantly, approach these changes as an adventure in rediscovery rather than a loss to mourn. Your willingness to adapt and learn demonstrates love in its most mature form. But there's one area of the body that most couples avoid discussing entirely, despite it holding surprising potential for connection and pleasure. Here's a startling revelation from 3 decades of practice. The area most men completely overlook may actually be the most responsive zone on an aging woman's body. The inner thighs contain a dense concentration of nerve endings that become increasingly sensitive over time, yet most couples treat this region as merely a pathway to somewhere else. A common pattern emerges when I discuss intimacy with older couples. Men report feeling like they've tried everything, while women describe longing for more patient, exploratory touch. What surprises both partners is discovering that some of the most pleasurable sensations come from areas they've been rushing past for decades. The inner thighs consistently rank among the most overlooked yet responsive zones for women over 60. The anatomical explanation is fascinating. The femoral and obturator nerves create an intricate network throughout the inner thigh region, with nerve pathways that directly connect to the pelvic floor and genital area. As estrogen levels decline with age, these nerves often become more concentrated and responsive rather than less. The skin here remains thin and sensitive, making it an ideal area for building arousal gradually and naturally. When couples skip this area entirely, they miss crucial opportunities for physical preparation. Gentle stimulation of the inner thighs naturally increases blood flow to the entire pelvic region, creating the kind of gradual, full-body arousal that older women's bodies often require. Without this preparation, direct genital contact can feel jarring or uncomfortable rather than pleasurable. The emotional impact of ignoring this area extends far beyond physical sensation. When a partner takes time to slowly explore and appreciate the inner thighs, it communicates patience, curiosity, and genuine interest in giving rather than receiving pleasure. This builds the emotional safety and trust that serve as the foundation for meaningful intimacy, particularly important as couples navigate the vulnerability that comes with aging bodies. My specific recommendation involves dedicating 5 to 10 minutes exclusively to inner thigh stimulation during each intimate encounter. Use light fingertip circles, gentle palm pressure, or soft kisses along the entire inner thigh area, from knee to groin. Pay careful attention to your partner's breathing and body language, allowing her responses to guide your pressure and pace. Treat this time as valuable in itself, not as foreplay for something else. The transformation I observe when couples embrace this approach is remarkable, often leading to deeper arousal and more satisfying experiences for both partners. But while the inner thighs respond beautifully to patient attention, there's another area where patience becomes absolutely critical, one where most men make a potentially painful mistake through overly direct, aggressive contact. One of the most well-intentioned yet problematic assumptions I encounter involves the clitoris, specifically the belief that direct contact is always welcome and that immediate stimulation will create the desired response. This approach, which may have worked in younger years, can actually become counterproductive and even painful as women age. Statistical data from recent intimacy studies reveals that over 60% of women over 50 report increased clitoral sensitivity, yet their partners often respond by applying the same pressure and techniques used decades earlier. I regularly counsel couples who are baffled by what they perceive as decreased responsiveness, when the reality is often the opposite: heightened sensitivity that requires a completely different approach. The medical explanation centers on hormonal changes that occur during and after menopause. As estrogen levels decline, the tissues around the clitoris become thinner and more delicate, while paradoxically becoming more concentrated with nerve endings. This creates a situation where the area becomes simultaneously more sensitive and more vulnerable to overstimulation. what once felt pleasurable can now feel overwhelming or even painful. Physically, direct clitoral contact too early in the encounter often triggers a protective response rather than an arousal response. The body may contract rather than relax, blood flow may actually decrease instead of increase, and natural lubrication may be inhibited rather than enhanced. This creates a cycle where the very actions intended to increase pleasure actually work against arousal. The emotional consequences can be devastating for both partners. Women may begin to dread intimate contact, worrying that touch will be uncomfortable or painful. They may feel broken or abnormal, especially if they don't understand why their bodies are responding differently than before. Men, meanwhile, may feel rejected or inadequate, interpreting their partner's withdrawal as lack of desire rather than physical discomfort. The solution requires a complete reframing of approach. Begin with indirect stimulation around the clitoral area, the mons pubis, the outer labia, and the areas above and beside the clitoris. Use gentle circular motions with well-lubricated fingers, applying only the lightest pressure initially. Allow at least 10 to 15 minutes of this indirect stimulation before considering any direct contact. Even then, begin with the gentlest possible touch, using the pad of your finger rather than the tip, and always with adequate lubrication. Think of this as tuning a delicate instrument rather than playing a familiar song. The goal is to gradually awaken responsiveness rather than immediately demanding a response. While we've been discussing areas that require careful, modified attention, there are other zones that many couples need to avoid entirely. Places where uninvited touch can instantly destroy the trust and safety essential for intimate connection. Perhaps no other boundary violation destroys intimate trust faster than unexpected anal contact. Despite what popular media might suggest, survey data consistently shows that the vast majority of women over 50 find uninvited anal touch unwelcome, uncomfortable, and emotionally jarring. Yet this remains one of the most common complaints I hear from women seeking to understand why intimate encounters have become sources of tension rather than connection. The assumption that anal contact is universally desired or acceptable represents a fundamental misunderstanding of both anatomy and consent. Clinical research indicates that fewer than 15% of women over 60 express interest in anal stimulation, while nearly 70% report feeling uncomfortable or violated when touched there without explicit discussion and permission. This disconnect between expectation and reality creates one of the most damaging rifts in mature, intimate relationships. From a physiological perspective, the anal area contains numerous nerve endings that can be highly sensitive, but not necessarily in a pleasurable way. Unlike other erogenous zones, this area lacks natural lubrication and can be particularly sensitive to pressure, temperature changes, and unexpected contact. For many women, especially those who have experienced childbirth, hemorrhoids, or other health issues common with aging, this area may be associated with discomfort or medical concerns rather than pleasure. The physical consequences of uninvited anal contact often include immediate tension, muscle contraction, and a protective response that can shut down arousal entirely. The body's natural reaction to unexpected touch in this area is often defensive rather than receptive, which can instantly derail an intimate encounter that was progressing positively. More significantly, the emotional impact can last far beyond the physical moment. Women frequently describe feeling that their boundaries have been crossed, that their comfort and consent were not prioritized, or that their partner was more focused on his own curiosity or desires than her comfort and pleasure. This erosion of trust can create lasting hesitation about intimate encounters, with women becoming guarded and anxious rather than open and receptive. The solution is straightforward, but requires genuine respect for boundaries. This area should never be touched without explicit, verbal consent obtained outside of the intimate moment. If there's interest in exploring this area, the conversation should happen fully clothed in a non-sexual context, with clear agreement about what is and isn't acceptable. Most importantly, no must always be respected without argument, pressure, or repeated requests. The goal of intimate touch should always be creating safety and trust, not testing limits or satisfying curiosity at your partner's expense. Unfortunately, anal contact isn't the only area where men frequently make assumptions about welcome touch. There's another zone that many consider universally appealing, yet often creates discomfort rather than the desired response. The nipples present another area where men often operate from outdated assumptions, applying the same pressure and techniques that may have worked decades earlier, without recognizing how dramatically sensitivity can change with age. What once brought pleasure can now cause genuine discomfort or pain, yet many couples never discuss this shift, leading to years of unenjoyable experiences. Endocrinological studies reveal that postmenopausal hormonal changes significantly affect breast tissue sensitivity. As estrogen levels decline, breast tissue becomes less dense, but paradoxically more sensitive to pressure and temperature. Additionally, medications commonly prescribed to older adults, including blood pressure medications, antidepressants, and hormone replacement therapies, can further heighten nipple sensitivity, making previously enjoyable touch feel overwhelming or uncomfortable. I frequently encounter women who describe dreading breast contact during intimacy, not because they've lost interest in their partner, but because the sensations have become unpleasant. Many report that what once felt arousing now feels jarring, pinching, or even painful. Yet they often hesitate to speak up, worried about hurting their partner's feelings or appearing unresponsive. The physical reality is that aggressive nipple stimulation can actually inhibit arousal in sensitive individuals. Instead of increasing blood flow and sensitivity in a pleasurable way, too firm pressure can cause the body to contract defensively. This creates muscle tension throughout the chest and shoulders, working against the relaxation necessary for intimate connection. The emotional consequences compound the physical discomfort. Women may begin to anticipate and brace for uncomfortable touch, creating anxiety around intimacy. They may start avoiding positions or situations where breast contact is likely, gradually withdrawing from physical closeness altogether. Meanwhile, their partners often interpret this withdrawal as rejection or loss of attraction, when the issue is purely about comfort and technique. The solution requires both communication and adaptation. Start each encounter by asking about sensitivity levels, which can vary day to day based on hormones, stress, and health factors. Begin with the lightest possible touch, perhaps just the warmth of your palm resting gently on her breast. Use circular motions with your fingertips around the areola before approaching the nipple directly. If direct contact is welcome, use only the gentlest pressure, and always with well-moisturized hands to avoid friction. Consider that the most pleasurable breast contact for many older women involves the areas around the nipples, rather than the nipples themselves. The underside of the breast, the area between the breasts, and gentle massage of the entire breast can provide wonderful sensations without the intensity that direct nipple contact might create. Now that we've covered the areas requiring extreme caution or modified technique, let's shift our focus to the zones that are often completely overlooked, yet hold tremendous potential for creating the deep, lasting connection that mature couples seek. Consider this paradox. The areas of a woman's body that carry the most daily tension are often the ones that receive the least intimate attention. The neck and shoulders, which bear the physical weight of stress, responsibility, and decades of life experience, are frequently treated as mere stopping points on the way to more obvious destinations. Yet these regions hold extraordinary potential for creating the emotional safety and physical relaxation that mature intimacy requires. Neurological research demonstrates that the neck and shoulders contain some of the body's most complex nerve networks, including pathways that directly influence the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's relaxation response. When these areas are tense, which they almost always are in adults over 50, the entire body remains in a state of subtle alertness that works against intimate connection. Conversely, when neck and shoulder tension releases, it triggers a cascade of relaxation throughout the entire nervous system. I consistently observe couples who report breakthrough moments when they begin dedicating serious attention to these areas. Women describe feeling seen and cared for in ways that purely genital touch never achieved. The neck and shoulders are where we store worry, responsibility, and the physical manifestation of life's burdens. When a partner takes time to genuinely address this tension, it communicates care for the whole person, not just the sexual body. Physically, neglecting these areas means missing the opportunity to activate the relaxation response that's essential for arousal in older adults. Tense neck and shoulder muscles restrict blood flow, maintain stress hormones at elevated levels, and keep the body in a state incompatible with pleasure and openness. Without addressing this foundational tension, attempts at intimate touch often feel mechanical rather than connecting. The emotional significance extends even deeper. The neck, in particular, represents vulnerability. It's the area we instinctively protect when threatened. When someone touches our neck with genuine care and attention, it sends a powerful message of safety and trust. For women who may feel self-conscious about aging bodies or uncertain about their desirability, this kind of attentive, non-sexual touch rebuilds confidence and emotional intimacy. My recommendation involves spending 10 to 15 minutes on neck and shoulder massage before any intimate encounter. Use warm hands and firm but gentle pressure, working slowly from the base of the skull down to the shoulder blades. Pay particular attention to the areas where the neck meets the shoulders, often the sites of greatest tension. Use circular motions with your thumbs along the muscle lines, and don't hesitate to ask what pressure feels best. This isn't preliminary touch, it's foundational touch. The relaxation and trust you build during these minutes creates the emotional and physical foundation for everything that follows. When done with genuine attention and care, neck and shoulder massage becomes an intimate act in itself, one that often leads to deeper connection than any other single technique. The transformation I witness when couples embrace this approach reminds me why touch, at its best, is always about so much more than technique. It's about communicating love, attention, and genuine care for another person's well-being. What would you say if I told you that one of the most powerful erogenous zones on a woman's body is located nowhere near her breasts or genitals? The lower back, specifically the area just above the tailbone and along the sacrum, contains nerve pathways that connect directly to sexual response centers, yet remains virtually ignored in most intimate encounters. This oversight represents one of the greatest missed opportunities for creating deep, satisfying connection. Anatomical studies reveal that the sacral nerve plexus, located in the lower back region, plays a crucial role in sexual arousal and response. These nerves connect directly to the pelvic floor, genitals, and the areas responsible for orgasmic response. When stimulated properly, the lower back can trigger sensations that radiate throughout the pelvis and contribute significantly to overall arousal. What makes this particularly relevant for older couples is that these nerve pathways often become more accessible and responsive with age, not less. Many women express surprise when they discover how responsive this area can be to attentive touch. The lower back often holds years of tension from daily activities, stress, and the physical demands of life. When this tension is addressed with skilled, patient touch, it creates both physical relief and emotional release. Women frequently describe feeling waves of relaxation and pleasure that begin in the lower back and spread throughout their entire body. Ignoring this area means missing a significant opportunity for full-body arousal. While couples focus on more obvious erogenous zones, they bypass an area that could enhance and amplify the sensations created elsewhere. The lower back serves as something of a volume control for sexual response. When tension is released here, sensations throughout the rest of the body become more intense and pleasurable. The emotional component is equally important. The lower back represents support and strength. both literally and metaphorically. When a partner takes time to care for this area, it communicates attention to overall well-being rather than just sexual satisfaction. This kind of thoughtful touch builds trust and emotional intimacy, particularly valuable for couples navigating the vulnerabilities that come with aging bodies. My specific technique recommendation begins with warm hands placed flat against the lower back, just above the tailbone. Use firm but gentle pressure to make slow circles, gradually working outward toward the hips. Pay particular attention to the dimples on either side of the spine. These areas are often especially sensitive. Use your thumbs to apply gentle pressure along the sacrum, moving from the base of the spine toward the tailbone. Spend at least 5 to 10 minutes focusing exclusively on this area, allowing tension to release gradually. The key is approaching this touch as valuable in itself, not as preparation for something else. Many women report that lower back stimulation alone can create profound states of arousal and relaxation, making everything that follows more intense and satisfying. However, even when couples discover these responsive areas and begin incorporating them into their intimate encounters, there's still one crucial element that can make or break the entire experience, and it has nothing to do with where you touch, but rather how and when you do it. Even when couples master the where of intimate touch, they often struggle with the when and how, the rhythm, timing, and responsiveness that transform mechanical contact into genuine connection. The most common timing mistake I observe is maintaining a predetermined pace, regardless of how a partner's body is actually responding, treating intimacy like following a recipe rather than dancing with another person. Research in human sexuality demonstrates that arousal patterns become increasingly individualized with age. What worked at a consistent pace in younger years may now require a much more variable, responsive approach. Heart rate patterns, circulation changes, and hormonal fluctuations all affect how quickly or slowly the body responds to stimulation. Yet many couples continue operating on autopilot, following familiar patterns without adapting to current physical realities. The most telling pattern I notice involves couples who describe feeling disconnected even during intimate moments. Men often report feeling like they're working hard, but not getting the response they expect, while women describe feeling pressured to respond on a timeline that doesn't match their body's natural rhythm. This creates a cycle where both partners become focused on performance rather than connection. Physiologically, rushing or maintaining an inflexible pace can actually work against arousal. The nervous system requires time to shift from everyday alertness into the relaxed, receptive state necessary for intimate pleasure. When touch follows a mechanical pattern rather than responding to bodily cues, it can maintain stress responses rather than encouraging the natural progression toward arousal and satisfaction. The emotional consequences extend far beyond physical satisfaction. When timing feels disconnected from actual response, women may begin to feel like their bodies are failing to perform correctly, while men may interpret slower responses as rejection or loss of attraction. Both partners can develop performance anxiety, worrying more about achieving expected responses than enjoying present sensations. The solution requires developing what I call responsive rhythm, the ability to match your touch to your partner's breathing, muscle tension, and verbal cues. Start each encounter by simply placing your hands on her body and breathing together for several minutes. Let her breathing pattern guide the initial pace of your touch. When her breathing deepens, slow down your movements. When she begins to move more, gradually increase your rhythm. Pay attention to her muscle tension as a guide for pressure and pace. If muscles are contracting, ease the pressure and slow the pace. If her body is relaxing and opening, gradually increase intensity. Use her sounds and movements as feedback, not as goals to achieve, but as information about what her body needs in each moment. Most importantly, abandon any preconceived timeline. Some encounters may require 45 minutes of gentle touch before her body becomes fully responsive. Others may unfold more quickly. The goal is to follow her body's lead rather than imposing an external schedule. This brings us to the final and perhaps most crucial mistake, one that underlies all the others and has the power to either unlock or completely block the intimate connection that mature couples seek. The most fundamental mistake underlying all others is perhaps the most surprising: the assumption that after years or decades together, you automatically know what your partner wants and needs. This mind-reading approach to intimacy, believing that love and familiarity equal telepathic understanding, creates more distance between couples than any physical technique ever could. Survey data from long-term relationships reveals a startling disconnect. While 85% of men believe they understand their partner's preferences, only 32% of their female partners agree. This gap widens significantly with age, as bodies change, medications affect sensation, and life experiences shift emotional needs. I regularly counsel couples who've been together for 30 or 40 years, yet have never had honest conversations about what actually feels good versus what they've been tolerating or pretending to enjoy. The psychological explanation centers on what researchers call assumed similarity, the tendency to believe our partners think and feel exactly as we do. When combined with the natural hesitancy many people feel about discussing intimate preferences, this creates relationships where both partners are essentially guessing about what the other wants while assuming they already know the answer. Physically, this leads to years of potentially unsatisfying encounters where techniques continue unchanged simply because no one has asked whether they're actually working. Bodies that have shifted in sensitivity, responsiveness, or preference continue to be touched in ways that may no longer bring pleasure simply because the assumption exists that past patterns still apply. The emotional consequences are profound and often devastating. Women may spend years feeling unheard or misunderstood, while men may feel confused and rejected when their tried and true approaches no longer generate the responses they expect. Both partners may begin to believe they've simply grown apart or lost their connection, when the reality is they've never learned to communicate about their evolving needs. The solution requires courage more than technique. Start conversations about intimacy outside the bedroom when you're both relaxed and fully clothed. Ask open-ended questions like, "What kind of touch feels best to you these days?" Or, "Is there anything you'd like more of or less of when we're intimate?" Listen without defending past approaches or explaining your intentions. The goal is learning, not proving yourself right. Make these conversations ongoing rather than one-time events. Bodies and preferences continue evolving throughout life, and what feels wonderful today may not feel the same 6 months from now. Consider monthly check-ins where you each share what's been working well and what might need adjustment. During intimate encounters, maintain this curiosity and communication. Simple questions like, "Does this pressure feel good?" Or, "Would you like me to continue this or try something different?" Transform mechanical touch into responsive connection. Pay attention not just to what she says, but how she says it, and give her permission to change her mind or ask for something different even in the middle of an encounter. Most importantly, approach these conversations with genuine curiosity rather than defensiveness. This isn't about past failures or missed opportunities. It's about creating the kind of intimate connection that deepens and improves with age rather than diminishing over time. The couples I work with who embrace this approach often tell me they feel like they're discovering each other all over again. After decades together, they're having the most satisfying, intimate experiences of their lives, not despite their age, but because of the wisdom, patience, and emotional maturity that comes with it. This is what intimacy at its best looks like. Not a performance or a routine, but an ongoing conversation between two people who continue choosing to know and care for each other in ever deeper ways.